Tuesday marks South Korean President Park Geun-hye's first year in office. She's expected to launch a 3-year plan aimed at boosting the economy by cutting red tape for business. Harry Fawcett takes a look back on her first year and the challenges she's faced.
365 days ago, South Korea's first female president was sworn in. The daughter of a former dictator who re-entered politics late in life as her party's savior, she talked of national integration and the chance to build a fairer economy. 12 months on, and this country's divided political landscape is more fractured than ever. Opponents accuse the government of trying to cover up an attempt to influence the presidential election in Park's favor by the country's spy agency, the National Intelligence Service. Presidencies and political programs are always hostage to events, and the first year in office of Park Geun-hye has been dominated by the NIS scandal like nothing else. It's also hindered her opportunities to get her plans enacted. The accusations that NIS agents sent millions of tweets attacking Park's opponent are being investigated by prosecutors. President Park says she had no knowledge of any such scheme. After all, she was not in power at the time. But the opposition accuses the government of hampering the investigation.
Even though the government said that the prosecutor's office and the court will decide for the matter, many believe that our government has something to hide.
Jae Ho, who runs a small design and events firm, voted for President Park, attracted by her promises of reining in the bully boy tactics of South Korea's vast conglomerates. But so far, he's seen nothing to suggest that will change.
Say somebody is bidding for a museum. Their parent company can provide sponsorship, so Hyundai could get something from Hyundai Motors. It's not illegal, but is it fair play? It's like telling a person with a spear and a bow to compete with somebody with a rifle and a gun.
And yet, so-called economic democratization was the campaign catchphrase. One political ally says the president has simply been confronted by the need to prioritize jobs and growth.
So I think she has shifted her paradigm. She has not given up entirely on her economic democratization, but she really wants to make sure that she is able to give jobs to Koreans, especially younger Koreans.
One area where the president has earned credit is the consistency of her trust-building approach to North Korea. Resolute when taking office during the worst crisis in relations for many years, and this month securing the restart of reunions of separated families after rare high-level talks between North and South. If she's able to make significant progress on inter-Korean affairs, the domestic struggles of her first year may well fade from view. Harry Fawcett, Al Jazeera, Seoul.
Well, for more on this, we're joined via Skype by Dr. Robert Kelly. He's Professor of Political Science and Diplomacy at Busan National University in South Korea. Thanks very much for being with us. How do you rate President Park's first year in office?
Good. She's done a pretty good job on foreign policy, which I think is the most important thing, the most important issue in Korean politics, particularly North Korea, dealing with North Korea, which is an endless challenge. On domestic politics, I don't think she's changed very much. She's very much a product of the South Korean status quo and is not really about to change that, which is unfortunate. There are a number of things in Korea that I think should be altered that would make Korean life a little bit easier. Things like the oligopolization of a lot of Korean markets. That means you have a very few competitors, and so you have very high prices for consumers. There's a lot of consumer debt. Alcoholism is kind of a problem, things like that. I mean, there's some issues that she could tackle, but she's just not in a position to do that.
Well, when she came to power, she said that Korea needs to be happier. Why do Koreans struggle so much on that front?
Sure, yeah. I mean, she actually got some flack for saying that, right? People said she was sort of silly and trite for saying that. But I actually think that's quite correct. I live in Korea myself, and Koreans, for example, are very well known for their affinity for education. What that actually means in practice is that Korean kids between the ages of about 6 and 16 spend something like 10 to 12 hours a day in schooling. They go to schooling after school and then to nighttime schooling, like private or cram schools and stuff like that. And this puts enormous pressure, emotional and financial pressure on families, for example. And there have been all these efforts to try to roll that back. She's tried, for example, but not really done very much. Or the status of Korean women, which is another sort of big issue. A lot of Korean women drop out of the workforce in their mid-20s, early 30s because they have to have children, because when they want to have children, because there's no daycare here. This is something, and this is an issue that my wife and I have wrestled with here in Korea. And it's very unfortunate because a lot of people thought, well, Park Geun-hye, she's sort of a woman, she's going to sort of be more interested in this. There's some feminist hopes that Park Geun-hye would move on this issue, and she just has not. I mean, she's just such a product of the traditional Korean establishment that I just don't think she's ready to take on these sacred cows.
Is she popular?
Yes, she is, actually. Her approval ratings have been hovering over 50%, if I recall. There was just a poll out a few days ago. Her approval ratings have been around, I think, like 50 to 55. But she's more popular with older Koreans than younger Koreans, and I think that's the real issue going forward. Again, I teach at a university, and most of my students, literally, I can only think of one student who actually cares for her. A lot of them see her as a product of the old Korea they're trying to sort of shake off. Her father was one of the dictators in the 60s and 70s in Korea's pre-democratic history. So she's popular with older people who remember sort of the glory days of Korea's super growth in the 60s and 70s, but have sort of conveniently forgotten that Korea was also a dictatorship for 40 years.
It may seem hard to believe for many of us, but it seems that it's been easier for her to make headway with the intractable neighbor North Korea than it is to make any change domestically.
Yeah, that's right. She's actually, I mean, Korea's domestic structure is pretty locked in. I mean, there's a pretty standard set of sort of what economic policies that various presidents have sort of followed more or less for decades, and it'd be pretty tough to actually take that stuff on. So I kind of understand why she hasn't done it. But on foreign policy, and that's really what I would say is really the most important issue in dealing with North Korea. I mean, everybody knows that North Korea is very erratic, it's very Orwellian, it treats its people horribly, and she's managed to get some progress out of North Korea. There hasn't been an incident in her first year. She just got those family reunions, which we all saw on television. I mean, I chalk that up as real success. So on foreign policy, I'd say she's, she got like a B.
Okay. Robert Kelly, great to speak to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.